Good evening, everyone. My name is Lori Barrientos Sanchez, and I'm the Director of Operations for Busboys Poets Books. My pronouns are they, them, and she, her, and I'm just really happy to see you all here. Happy Pride Month. We are so honored and happy to be able to welcome Jaime Ko, local Filipinx author, and their brother, Patrick Ko, who's a content creator. And we're so lucky because today they're going to share with us not only the spirit of like coming of age and siblinghood that's found in Mala and the Mask of Gold, but also the Filipinx mythology. And of course, we can't encompass all of Filipino queerness and transness into one little program, but we're going to try our best to kind of introduce y'all to some things that you might not already know. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jaime Ko, who goes by they, them, and Patrick Ko, who goes by he, him. Hey, y'all.
Hi, Lori. Thanks for having us.
Hi, Lori.
Of course. I'm going to head on back now.
Sure. So, hi, everyone.
Hi, guys.
Thanks for joining the call. As Lori mentioned, my name is Jaime Ko. I go by they, them pronouns and identify as gender fluid, non-binary from, Zamboanga City, Philippines. Patrick, if you want to go.
Oh, yeah. My name is Patrick Ko. I am Jamie's older brother. I go by he, him. And yeah, we're here to present Mala and the Mask of Gold for you guys today.
Yeah, we have a very, very fun presentation to go over. I don't know if, Patrick, you want to start sharing the second screen?
We are going to start sharing the second screen, yes.
Oh, perfect. Here we go. And we're not going to have this kind of like a lecture. It's really going to be more of a discussion and exploration of, the book, Mala and the Mask of Gold, and really just going into a little bit of an intro and terminology before we go into a deep dive, right? Just meeting us two and really learning a little bit and grounding ourselves on LGBTQ plus terminology, because I'm sure folks within the audience, or maybe some folks who may not really know much about, the LGBTQ plus community, or maybe wanting to learn more. I know even myself being in the community, I'm always learning so much and always unlearning different things. So just really having the opportunity to, get our feet a little wet before just diving deep into the story, right? How do you feel about that?
Exactly. No, I think as someone who's identifies as cis, who's also a straight ally, again, the most important thing that we allies can do is give the stage to the LGBTQ community and let them just make their voice louder, basically.
Love that. Awesome. And then next into the agenda, we'll then go into the really fun part as well, which is Filipino mythology, which I'm so excited. I know my Kuya and I are really excited to talk about this because we're huge enthusiasts of it.
We love it.
So we'll just really explore and do a deep dive into, the folklore, magic, and mythos of the Philippines. Going into part 3 of the agenda, you'll meet our heroes, and we'll kind of also go into, exploring the creation of Mala and Salem, who are our two protagonists of the book. So, stay tuned for that. And then finally, for the 4th part of the segment, will be questions and answers in the end. So we'll definitely be here to stay. And I'm so excited to hear, any questions that folks may be having. So please stay tuned to hold questions until the end of the presentation. So awesome. So I think we already introduced ourselves a little bit, but just going a little bit. Here's a picture of my brother and I. This is us when we were
This is when we looked our best, basically. This is our...
Yeah, we glowed down. No, I'm just kidding. But I thought that this would be a really fun way, again, just reminders of our pronouns. I use they, them pronouns, but I'm also okay with he, she. And I'm the author of Mala and the Mask of Gold for folks who are on the call today.
And again, my name is Patrick Ko. I do a lot of things right now. I love mostly going to be content creation and music. Anything that involves that, I'm definitely for that. And yeah, I helped a little bit when it came with Jamie when it came to writing this book.
Yeah. And so we'll actually go a lot and deep dive into that piece of, the power of siblinghood and how I really leaned into, not just my community, but really leaning into, my older brother, into really creating a story that was authentic to siblinghood when it comes to Filipinx culture and traditions. Okay, next slide. Oh yeah, we're fantasy enthusiasts.
Yeah, exactly. We have that part.
Yeah, we are no by means experts of Filipinx mythology, but we are huge enthusiasts of it. So this is exactly why we have the call today, presentation day. So now we're just going to go into about the story, and we're just going to go ahead and play a video that kind of details, why Mala and Mask of Gold was created, and about the story a little bit. So,
we can just play.
Sorry, folks. I think we're having some technical difficulties. Hold on. Patrick, are you? Could you scroll back to the slides? Is Lori?
We should have the video. This video it should be encoded into it right here.
Yes. We are.
Okay, cool. Well, the video is downloading right now, so...
Hi, my name is Jaime Ko, and I'm the author of the working title, Mala and the Mask of Gold. So this book is about two siblings, Mala and Salem, as they go through a spiritual journey exploring the mythical world around them. And in this world, it's essentially the pre-colonial Philippine islands, and I really wanted to explore my history and culture of the Philippines as these two characters kind of go through, survival, trying to save their culture, while one of the characters is also dealing with, LGBTQ plus themes. I was largely inspired by a lot of the stories that I grew up watching and reading, and one of those namely is, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and also books by Rick Riordan, the Percy Jackson series. Those were some great stories that largely influenced why I wanted to write a story about Mala and Salem as they kind of adventured around the mythical Filipino world around them. There is a huge diversity gap within literature that doesn't really tell these types of stories, especially when it comes to Filipino literature and LGBTQ plus literature as well. I believe one of the things that makes my book really unique is that one of the main characters is actually gender fluid, Mala. And I think that's really important because I feel like there's really not a lot of characters out there that really explore gender fluidity. And also within the public, a lot of people don't really know what it means to be gender fluid or what that identity is like. And I wanted to share, my own personal experience being gender fluid myself within a character and reflect that type of story. I think one of the coolest stories that I'll be exploring within this book is the stories of the shamans and the babelans. This is a real culture that is practiced even in today's Philippine society within witch doctors, sorcery, divinity, healing, the practice of shamanism within the Philippines. It's an important integral function for the communities in healing, and they have an important role within society. And so I'm very excited to share that type of story that's very real and very deep rooted within Filipino culture. If you're a reader who loves magic, who loves exploring the ideas of mythology, if you're into spirituality, culture, if you even want to learn more about Filipino culture and mythology, and if you're someone who's LGBTQ+, if you've gone through that as well, you're going to love this book. My biggest hope for this book is that a lot of you as readers are going to be inspired to owning your identity. I think that's the biggest thing because a lot of people go through this type of journey alone, or they choose to go alone. And that doesn't, always have to be the case. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to have help. It's okay to have and find a community that will help you in exploring your identity and exploring that inner power that belongs to you. And it's really about finding that power within yourself to embrace the ambiguities of life so that you will go and find your purpose. My name is Jaime Ko, and I'm the author of the working title, Mala and the Mask of Gold. Awesome. Thanks, Lori. Great. I guess we can go into the next slide. So that was a little bit about, the story of Mala Mask and kind of why I wrote the story. And just again, as we dive deeper into, celebrating LGBTQ+ identity, as it is coming to a close to Pride Month today, and it's June, we wanted to really explore a little bit on LGBT plus terminology. I know I was kind of throwing words around there such as gender fluidity, right? And the concept and notion of gender diversity. And just to really go over a few things, I know earlier Patrick had stated, he identified as a cisgender, person. Just a little on these definitions, just so folks who may not be too familiar with these words are a little familiar as we go forward, right? Most folks, I'm going to assume, know what LGBTQ plus stand for. But for the other words, right, we kind of go into cisgender is a person whose sense of personal identity and gender corresponds with their assigned sex at birth, right? So Patrick, if you want to go into that notion, if you were, if, for example, if you were assigned, male at birth, it's something
exactly. Yeah, it's who you are, and you feel comfortable with who you are ever since you're born, and you don't feel the need to change, or you feel at home with the body, that you've been that you were born with, basically.
Right. And someone who identifies as transgender is a person whose sense of personal identity and gender does not correspond with what they were assigned with at birth, right? So people who are transgender also feel at home with their body, also feel at home with their gender. It's that concept of where they were assigned at birth that doesn't really correspond with that, right? Where maybe you were like myself, right? I identify as gender fluid. I was assigned at birth male, but as I grew up, I realized that my gender identity did not correspond with what I was assigned at birth. So for me, that gender spectrum was more of, okay, I kind of fell in between different spectrums of my gender identity, and it wasn't corresponding to what a doctor may have assigned for me from when I was born. Right. But however, I still feel at home in my body. I know myself. I know my gender, and it's something that it just doesn't correspond with what I was assigned at birth. Right.
Exactly.
As we move forward, we're going to go explore the term queer. So this is just, again, trigger warning for folks who may not know what the term is or may not be familiar, or for folks who are in the LGBT plus community. Queer is a word that has been reclaimed by the community just as of recent. It actually was previously used as a slur if we're looking at historical times, but many people, at least within the millennial and Gen Z generation, now actually use it as more of a self-identifier within the community among the younger generations. But it's just something to note, as we, throw around the word, queer, is something that I am okay and comfortable with, but I know most folks within the LGBT plus community are still, especially from the older generation, are still trying to, hold a grasp on with what that means. But, the word queer has been more of a, discursively created word that is kind of evolving as we move through time, right? From a slur to now becoming this reclamation of identity, and vice versa.
Right. And just to jump onto that, again, because of that history, if you are someone who identifies as cisgender and straight, there is a privilege to that. And knowing that you always have to kind of just always keep that in mind when it comes to just helping out the LGBTQ community. So
yes, for sure. Absolutely. All right. And to go to the next few terms. So someone who identifies as non-binary, again, is kind of this umbrella term for gender identities that are neither male nor female, right? So these are identities that are outside of the gender binary. So as we mentioned earlier, the word transgender is, it's kind of this umbrella term, but not everyone who identifies as transgender identifies the same way, right? And so this non-binary is kind of one of these identities that falls within the trans umbrella. But what also kind of is something to note too is not everyone who identifies as non-binary does not also identify as transgender, right? But that's just something to note in regards to, non-binary identity. It just essentially means, a gender identity that is neither male nor female, or may be existing within the spectrum of male and female.
A lot of layers. A lot of layers
there.
Yeah.
Next one. Oh, looks like there was a little mix up within the slide there, but gender identity essentially is just going to the concept of, an individual's personal sense of having a particular gender. And then the last one is gender expression. So gender expression is the way in which a person expresses their gender identity. This is typically through, their appearance, the way they dress, and their behavior. Now, this is something I want to note that is very important because gender identity does not equal gender expression, okay? Someone's gender identity may not be how they may express their gender. So this is just something to note and just something to keep in mind when it comes to, being more inclusive to gender diversity, right? Especially when it comes to the trans community. So that's just something to keep in mind, when it comes to gender identity is more of how someone feels and how someone is in touch with their soul and in touch with, how they identify. But how they want to present day to day, it can vary and it can change. And that doesn't mean, if they present a certain way that their identity has changed or shifted, right? So that's just something to know for sure.
Then we're going to head on to the next slide, which is
Philippine mythos and folklore. I'm so excited. Yeah, so we're gonna do a really deep dive into the Philippine magic and folklore. Before we jump in, this is just some beautiful artwork that I found from Joel Senor. This is something from like the underworld that I saw, and it was just like this beautiful piece of just depiction of what Filipino culture and folklore looks like. And it's just super magical, super like spooky, and I just can't deep dive into things.
Is the god of the underworld of the Philippines, Sedapa, in this portrait? I kind of want to see.
I don't know if Sedapa is in it, but we can definitely explore, Sedapa. But I think these are more of like the lower creatures of yeah. We can see a lot of the different layers and a lot of different colors. You can see it's just so chaotic, but it's kind of like beautiful in a way, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Love that. So a few ground rules are just kind of going into, what really will help with kind of identifying ourselves into Filipino folklore. So with any type of mythos, there's always pillars, right? And that helps us with kind of, knowing kind of what kind of sets us apart from different, other mythologies. But with, Filipino mythology, we have kind of separating it to three pillars. We have the creatures of lower mythologies, as we were seeing in the previous slide. So these are more of creatures that are kind of identified with like the underworld, right? Or maybe they are creatures that existed on Earth, but were kind of seen as like creatures or monsters. So a lot of these are known as like ghouls, monsters, even ganas aswang, which is, a term for like a monster in the Philippines, or abayans, which are like these spirit guides or spirit companions. So an example is the manananggal. So if you know, Patrick,
if you know the book, yeah,
exactly.
Me and Jamie have a couple of stories when it comes to definitely creatures of the lower mythology when it comes to our past. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And we'll go more into detail about kind of our shared experiences growing up in the Philippines and how we kind of, how those creatures of lower mythology were very real to pretty much our day-to-day as, when we were kids growing up in the Philippines and even in America as well. So next are kind of these mortals, right? So these mortals are, a key figure within a lot of the mythos. So these could be babaylans, right? Which are the shamans or known as shamans in the Philippines. It could even be known as demigods, or also hero warriors within a lot of the epic literature that you may read or may find online or in books exploring Filipino mythos. So a known one is Lang-ang of the Ilocano region. So he's a known, hero in a lot of the epic Filipino folklore. But, there's a lot of also, babaylans as well, just in real life that are this kind of spiritual connection to the spirit world and kind of vice versa to the realism of our physical realm, right? And then finally, we have the deities and powerful diwatas, or some known as spirits. So these are really the gods, the goddesses, our ancestor spirits, or even known as immortals. So those on kind of that higher spiritual plane that kind of rule over us on that higher arching world. So as Patrick had noted earlier, Sedapa is that deity of death, right? So deity of death is kind of like this like king of the underworld, really ruler of the underworld that is kind of overseeing a lot of them, and a lot of the creatures of lower mythology really, bow down, or maybe they don't even bow down. Maybe they are of equal splendor to these deities, but at the end of the day, it's kind of a lot of these, it kind of helps to separate, where we are from a pillar of within the mythos. So
right, very comparable to like Greek mythology, I would say, like Sedapa to Hades, all that stuff.
But what makes us cool and what makes us different from Greek mythology and other mythos is that, going to the next slide, is that we have a very diverse ethnogeographic folklore, right? So in the previous slide, I was noting a lot of, you know, the pillars that kind of break down like how we kind of see mythology. But if you really understand, you know, Filipino culture and Filipino folklore, it really depends on the region that you're in, right? That's what makes the beauty of the Philippines so, you know, complex, is that our mythos is really dependent on our region, really dependent as well on our local, you know, folklore. So for example, we have the Tagalog myths, right? So this is more on the northern side. One of them is Lakapati. So you can see here, Lakapati is this, goddess who's depicted as this, deity of fertility. Right, and I have also the artist who drew this beautiful depiction of Lakapati, but she was really known as this, trans deity goddess, and this was something that was, very, depicted within the Tagalog myths. But within other regions, right, and other, oral mythology, Lakapati was seen very differently, right? Sometimes Lakapati was seen as an androgynous deity, right? So instead of her being this like trans woman goddess, maybe it was more of this androgynous, kind of displaying more gender fluidity, right, or non-binary identity, right, depending on what region you were in or where you were at. And some folks really saw Lakapati as this figure because of her connection to fertility, but also her connection to the earth and to the sky. So yeah.
And the really cool thing about the Philippines too, like before, the Spanish came in,
Right,
and everything, there were a lot of mythology that it wasn't really like binary. It was a lot of goddesses or gods that were like Lakapati that were, they didn't really go by the gender norms and everything.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Next, we'll go into the Bicolano myths, which are so beautiful, right? And also really, really looking into it, right? Here is the story of Halia and Bakunawa, right? Which is really integral within the Bicolano people and their region. So this is kind of, again, looking to it with seeing how Halia was this, goddess warrior of the moon, right? And how, she was a pivotal figure to kind of saving the culture by, fighting the Bakunawa every time the eclipse was coming on, right? And the Bakunawa was seen as this, eclipse bringer, right? Versus maybe other cultures may have believed in different moon deities, right? Maybe the Tagalog myths only believed in one goddess, which is Mayari, right? Mayari is only seen as this one goddess, whereas in the Bicolano myths, they actually believe maybe in 7 moons, right? I believe they believe in Bulan, Halia, Libulan, and all of those moon deities all together in one, right? So that's just like something to note, right? There's this beauty in the mythos, and it's a lot of overlap as well, and that overlap can really transcend into other regions too. If you even look into if you click into the next myth, which is Mindanao myths, exactly. And you click here is another picture depicting the imprisoned Naga, right? The imprisoned Naga, kind of very similar to the Bakunawa, right? However, they're very different stories. However, they're still drawing from that similar power or similar notion of this dragon Naga. The Bakunawa is known as a Naga, right? And here's this imprisoned Naga. The Bakunawa, from the Bicolano myths, is kind of this dragon that lurks within the waters underseas, but is going to destroy the world by maybe eating the moon. Whereas this imprisoned Naga, right, within the Mindanao myths is pretty much very similar. It's a Naga dragon, but more imprisoned within the sky, but would go ahead and destroy the world by, I think, eating all of the suns or something. But you can see there are similarities within the stories, right? A lot of overlap within these, but it's still a very different story at the end of the day, depending on the region you're in, which is what makes the Philippines so cool, because the mythos just keeps going.
It combines. What inspired you to really want to combine all the myths together to kind of just make this really amazing cohesive story?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Yeah, that's a great question. I really wanted to ensure that I was kind of reflecting a lot of the beauty that comes with Filipinx and Filipino mythology. And I thought one way to go about it was to really tie in the LGBTQ aspect of, deities within the Philippines, and really showcase, okay, even though, yes, there are a lot of regions that may have different belief systems and different, ways of, really going about how to tell their stories, there is still this unified message, right? Or this unified belief in how these gods and deities were all, very integral to the community, right? Especially when it comes to babaylans. No matter what region you're in, there was definitely a babaylan or, a witch doctor or some sort of, spiritual communer that was really tying in these deities or diwatas to kind of draw in their power and help the community, right?
Exactly.
And so that's where I was really trying to find this cohesive, union in that sense. But I was also not trying to erase the different stories that were being told from the regions, right?
Right.
And that was kind of also like the notion of like when I was telling this story, when Mal and Salem were going to the Isla Serena, no spoilers or anything, right? Mal and Salem, noted, oh my goodness, we arrived in this island, but it was a totally different culture. It was a totally different belief system. It was a totally different way of life, and from where we were, from Zambo, right? And that was an important thing to note because that's how it is in the Philippines. It's different wherever you go. It is not. And I wanted to really, really showcase that, right? Like, yes, there are these deities that may be different or overarching, right? But they're in the story, they're kind of the higher power, because it's easier to write a story where a lot of them are within the same world. It might get a little too intense. It's everywhere, but I try to make it at least seem that, okay, if they go to another island, it's going to be different, right?
Exactly.
And they're gonna view the Bakunawa very differently than how they view the Bakunawa in their home island. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because it's just very telling to how it is currently in the Philippines, with how, as we see, mythology is just very different depending on your land and ethnogeographic region.
Right. You basically combined, like, again, all the different mythologies of the Philippines, of the different islands, and again, that freedom of just like not like just different kinds of gods, no matter who they were, and like you like made a marriage together. So
exactly, you got it.
Yeah.
So yes, I guess we can go into the next slide. Really speaking into that, we did have queer deities or LGBT plus deities. And that's also what really makes our, mythology and folklore so cool. When I had found out about this, it was very, very awakening, at least for me, right? As someone who identifies as LGBT plus in the Filipinx community, it was very hard for me growing up. Being LGBT plus, my kuya knows it is something that is very still taboo within the Philippines and within our culture. So it was when I found out that there were these, deities that were, queer, or at least seen as these patrons of the LGBT community, I found it to be very liberating for my own spirit, as well as just for, brought me closer to my culture and my love for Filipino folklore, right? Because at the end of the day, these notions that we got from colonialism, that we got that, the world is binary and that, identifying with LGBTQ plus is a quote unquote sin. I got to break away from that mold, right? And I got to really draw in a lot of that, legacy that existed in the past from our ancestors. So going to that, as we mentioned, if we want to go clean the slide, I already mentioned Lakapati, shout out to Brian Bart, who drew this beautiful image of, the deity of fertility. She's so beautiful here, really depicted as this, deity of just the earth and just creation, and just really seen as something that is true to a lot of the Filipino community today, which is just the trans Filipinx community, right? A lot of babaylans actually were actually seen as trans, right? Or at least were a part of the gender diverse community. So it was really great to see that there was this notion as well, or this deity that also kind of communicated that within who they worship, right? Especially as someone who is very integral as the deity of fertility, right? As someone who brought life to them, who brought food, who brought all these things. So this is just something that I definitely wanted to call out because, babaylans, a lot of them were trans women. A lot of them were non-binary. They may have not been called that at the time. But they existed, right? And it was because they shared these aspects of earth and the sky, and all these things, right?
And they were respected too, like during that time as well. Very respected.
Yeah, they were respected, right? They were treated as leaders, and it was just something that just still shakes my head. Like here these powerful, trans people really leading communities, really being the center of just life. And now to this day, right, to see the effects of colonialism really then shape the narrative to then now have us treated as, third, not even just inhumanized, right? Like humanized with society, right? It's just so sad to see. So that's why, really I wanted to showcase that within the book, because I wanted to celebrate that aspect of our history and our culture, because we deserve that, right? Trans is magic, but it's not fictional. Not fictional, it's real. Okay, and so to the next ones, here you can see another beautiful picture of Bulan and Sidapa. The art is by John Naños. This is just another one. It's just a beautiful depiction of the god Bulan and the deity of death Sidapa. And they're actually known as this kind of like queer patrons of, homosexuality or within the LGBT community. And it's just such a beautiful depiction of their love together, right? Their love in just being these two gods from the opposite worlds, one from the sky and one from the underworld. And their love kind of signifies this kind of cycle of, rebirth and death, right? Because it's kind of like yin and yang. If you think about it in the Filipinx concept. Exactly, because the moon is really the symbol of rebirth, right? The moon is a symbol of life, and then of course Sidapa is a symbol from the underworld. But here you have these two, queer deities kind of falling in love, and kind of because of their love, they kind of cycled through a lot of this together. Basically, sharing life together, life and death. I really wanted to display their love here together as deities, because we don't really see that a lot. We don't really see, deities, especially like them, in a romance or in some sort of relationship.
Yeah, especially none that like really represent like a perfect circle of like harmony when it comes to that.
Yes, exactly. Like a love like that, like a queer romance like that, right? That represents a full circle of life and rebirth, right? Nice. That is truly beautiful. That is something like I have not really seen at all in other mythos or mythologies, where that love transcends love. That love is life, right? And death. And it is a constant circle. And so that's where I really see their love, and I see them as these patrons for our community. A lot of people within the community see them as well. Now I've heard a lot of discussions of folks maybe saying things, or maybe there have been like homophobic remarks trying to disingenuize like this type of depiction of their romance. But I'd like to say this, right? When it comes to Filipinx folklore mythology, it is always evolving. It is always evolving, and it is true to your heart, right? It doesn't matter what anyone tells you, what anyone says. If someone wants to tell you otherwise, lock them down, because that love is true. Your belief system is true. And the queerness and magic that comes from our folklore and legacy is true. And even folks within who may not identify as LGBT plus can take a lesson from that too, right? So,
right.
Absolutely. Just wanted to call that out there. So.
And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Are we going to go to the next slide now?
Yes, sir. Okay. We're going to go to the next slide. We're going to go and meet our heroes.
Meet the heroes.
Yes.
We're going to talk about the amazing artist who made these drawings.
We are. Huge shout out to Miss Kayla Craval. Everyone, she drew these beautiful characters and brought them to life. Her website is right down there. It's kingcanny.com. So just another huge shout out to Kayla. We will go into pretty much the process of creating these characters, but I worked really closely with Kayla to bringing these characters to life. And similar, I worked very closely with Patrick to bring Salem to life. And so we'll go more into detail about kind of like the storyboarding and all these things. So stay tuned into the next slide.
Oh, yep.
All right, so the first character we're going to go into is Mala. So Mala is, our gender fluid, non-binary character. So a fun fact about Mala is their name actually is derived from the Tagalog word Malaya, which it means freedom, right? And there's, a lot of, motifs and themes that go into, Malaya and, freedom in general, just within the story. But yes, Mala is, this when I was working with Kayla, we really went through a lot of these factors down here, and this was very important to kind of the creation of them, which is, you know, kind of depicting their age, right? 16. You know, my story is young adults, so it was geared towards young adults. So I wanted to kind of gear it toward like have Mala be 16, so can kind of gear towards, you know, younger audience, but also gear towards an older audience. But you can kind of see them kind of going through, you know, maybe that, you know, puberty stage of, you know, kind of, okay, they're really understanding their gender identity at that time and what that means to them growing up, right? As a young adult. You know, their height, their gender, their race, of course. We even had their own sign, which is like a Pisces. We wanted to give Mala the Pisces sign because, you know, they're very caring and empathic. So if you read the story, you know Mala is a very caring person, and they really draw signs from the moon, right? The two fish, and we saw that Pisces was really that best symbol to really cater to them. We also would explore goals, fears, and attitudes that would help drive Mala's character and help shape them throughout the story. So we'll go on to the next slide. Here are just some pictures and depictions that we found online, just storyboards and mood boards to help kind of create Mala today. And here's where you know, Kayla took all of this information and then pretty much plastered it into this beautiful image of Mala, and created
seamlessly.
I don't know how she does it. Her mind is amazing, but she did that. Next, we'll go into the next character. So I know, Patrick, you'll probably want to talk more.
Yeah. Well, when Jamie was creating Salem, they came to me like from the get-go, and they were like, "Look, I'm writing the story. I want to make this. I'm inspired by what we went through and what the trials we went through in our relationship. Do you want to tell how like I mean, I was one of the first people that Jamie ever came out to." Like when it happened, and I still remember that story to this day, where, you know, like Jamie pulled me aside. They said, "Hey, I like, you know, I'm not like anyone else. I feel like I'm attracted to men, to not just women, just men and everything." And I said, "I know, I know, and I support you." And there was and our relationship kind of just took that other stepping stone and up, and like just went on its way from there. So I know Salem is definitely created from that. It's where he's a very protective character. He wants his number one goal, his number one fear as well, is not being able to protect Mala and like, you know, who he feels like is his only family. So yeah, like he of course he has to be older. He's 18, has to be a little bit taller because he's the older one.
No, you hit it on the nail. Like, and this really stays true to really the power of siblinghood. And I think if there are, and like for most people who are on the call who knows about Filipino culture, Filipinx family, that siblinghood is so, like, the power of siblinghood is so true to so many Filipino families. And my kuya, right, my older brother, was someone that I trusted pretty much the most in my family. Like, we went through so many trials and tribulations when it came to immigrating to America. Right, growing up in Zamboanga City, and just it was so much. And to know that I could trust my older brother to tell him, hey, you know, at the time I first came out as gay, and then I came out as, you know, gender queer. And through all the times I came out, you know, Patrick had always been so like caring and empathic and just understood. Like, even if he didn't understood fully or he didn't know, he was like, you know, I still love you, bro. Like, it's fine. You're still my sibling. And he even asked, like, would you rather be called sibling? And you try. Every time you try, you call me sibling, you use they pronouns, and you try and you do all those things. And that's what makes you a great brother, right? That's why I love you. And that's why I really wanted to show that in Salem's character, because, you know, right, what you know. And that's really, you know, the older brother that I wanted depiction for Salem, and hopefully for other, you know, young readers out there who also have, you know, siblings out there as well, to show that there is that type of relationship that exists, and that you can also rely on your family as well, right? And so that's where I was very drawn to, you know, Salem. You know, the name Salem really comes in at peace. And then also just going into all of those things, right? So, and then here just a lot of those mood boards as well,
Yeah.
to going into their fisherman.
And of
Character.
course, you made Salem Aries, which is my like the
Yes.
like sun sign. So again, for better or worse, no hesitation. That's Salem. That's
Awesome.
basically.
So we are going to the 40-minute mark. So I'm just going to keep moving along into the scene. So yeah, so I guess we're going to go into the reading of a scene. And we'll try to do this really quickly because I know we're kind of short on time and everything. But yeah, I'm so excited to read a scene and we're going to read it together. So it'll be really fun. So bear in mind for the both of us. Right now, I have my copy of Mala and the Master Goal. It's my hardcover copy. So for folks who don't know, my hardcover is out now. So I'll be reading from my hardcover copy here. And we have the screenshots displayed online. Patrick has his copy there, his signed copy. And then we'll just, we'll go from here. Are you ready, Kuya?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay. All right. Salem looks out into the ocean and squints his eyes. He shakes his head.
It's still too dark for me to see anything, but we should see the island by daybreak.
My muscles begin to relax, and my head feels heavy and dizzy, as if my soul and body are not completely realigned yet. But then I feel it, the clamorous vibration. I close my eyes to concentrate on the strange disruption of energy, but my mind is still frazzled. I can tell the direction of the rapid vibration in the air. I look at the Takai flower constellation and realize the energy I am sensing is coming from that direction and must be originating from the Isla Serena. The cascading motion grows closer. Its beats feel like large wings flapping in the sky, creating ricochets in the natural course of the ocean air. Something is coming, I warn as I look over to Salem. I felt its energy while my consciousness was drifting afloat.
What? Where? I can't see too well.
He grabs the lamp and runs over to meet me in front of the Vinta. He holds it into the air. The fire of the lamp shimmers softly into quiet. Do you hear that? I ask.
Yeah, it sounds like large flapping. Is something flying towards us?
Asks Salem. Darkness shrouds our view, but I can feel it. Its immense vibration blasting noisily in the air. In the shadows of the darkness, a monstrous face emerges in the light, its bloodshot eyes glaring and long fang-filled mouth wide open. We hear a demonic screech. The flap of the beast's wings creates a large gust as it flies over above us, causing us to fall backwards into the Vinta. The lamp drops to the floorboard. The beating of the creature's wings is so strong that it creates large waves that rock the Vinta. Salem and I grab the mast of the sail so that we do not fly overboard.
What is that?
He yells. The loud bat-like beast flaps its wings, with each screech causing my ears to ring. Arg, I say as I cover my ears. Quickly, I maneuver to grab the lamp and shine it bright on the demon in the sky. It looks to only have an upper torso and pale, hairless skin that stretches throughout the tip of its wings and claws. The bottom half of it is missing, allowing the beast to be agile in flight. Bat-like wings, an upper torso demon? It's a manananggal! I scream.
No way.
Salem says as he stares at it, stunned. The fables and legends of this creature used to scare us as kids in the night. To see it now, alive and ready to be its next meal, strikes terror throughout my whole body. They are strong creatures that even groups of warriors have trouble facing together. They can kill hundreds of men, women, and children in their lifetime, leaving a bloodbath whenever it visited a village or city. Salem doesn't move. His body is as still as stone. The manananggal swipes a long, whip-like tongue, its tip like a spear and drenched in crimson flesh. Salem, move! Now! I yell. But He can't move, stunned at the creature's blood-thirsty glare. It wastes no time, eager to strike its prey like a skilled predator. Its long tongue shoots like a dart, aiming at Salem's heart. No! I shout, without hesitation. Throw the lamp in front of Salem. The beast's tongue makes contact with the glass, breaking the lamp. The oil and fire combust from the impact. The fire and oil mixes with the vampire's demonic flesh, recoiling its deadly appendage back into its mouth. And that's a sneak peek of Chapter 5, Castaway. Patrick, that was an amazing demonic screech.
Thank you.
If there was an Emmy I could give for that voice, that was good.
No. I wanted to do it right. Like
that
just
was
for the
that
book
was
and
great,
everything.
Priya. But no, thank you so much, everyone, for those who were able to sit in and really join us today. It was, truly, truly grateful for those who, were able to share this space and to learn more about, Filipinx folklore, magic, and culture. Huge, huge thank you to Busboys and Poets, Lori and Kevin, Celia, as well as the Busboys and Poets team for just helping to make this happen. And we just want to really have this time. Just last call out for questions in case, as time, we have about, I think, 13 minutes, but, want to put out this time for folks who have any questions.
Right. So guys, please, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask us. We're here for anything. No question is a bad one.
Yes. So I think Lori is helping to moderate these questions. I saw the question says, could you tell us more about your encounters with mythological creatures in the Philippines? Oh, Patrick,
yes, we can. Yes, we can.
We have so many. But I didn't want to go because
we do have a bunch. Yeah. Should we have our webcams for this one? Yeah. Well, you have one and I have one. Since we just talked about the Manananggal in that specific scene. Again, it's a creature that's basically just a torso. It has no legs. The only way it can move is through its vampire wings and has a very monstrous face with a long tongue. It's called Manananggal in the northern regions, but from where me and Jamie are from in Mindanao, we call it the aswang. And here's a really good example of how mythology can just affect your life in the Philippines. Because there's this one time where I was very, very young. I was like 6 or 7 years old, and me and Jamie went to the same school. And in front of that school, Ateneo de Zamboanga University. Yes. I want y'all to imagine, okay, so you guys have your school, imagine your high school, your middle school, and in the front lawn of that school was just a giant mansion, just a huge mansion that never had any lights on, that just looked like a really creepy, scary mansion from a horror movie, right? So we would always walk past that mansion every time we went home. And one day, one of my really, really close friends from my childhood, he just disappeared. No one knew what happened. He's no letter, no goodbye, no nothing. And the rumor was that there was an aswang, a manananggal, living in that mansion, right? So, and it didn't help that one time me and my friends were walking past, and in front of the gates of that mansion, there were just ripped up paper, there were torn clothes, and of course, as a little young Filipino boy, our imaginations just run wild, and we're like, this is it. He's captured by the aswang. We have to go save him. As in, I have to go save him. Everyone else was scared. So
you're so Salem.
Yeah. No, So the plan was I was gonna do an after school choir thing, and that went on into the night, and that way my family was gonna pick me up later. So it was at night. I snuck out of the practice and I went to the mansion, and I snuck in. I'm very, very quiet. Again, no lights, no nothing. And then I hear just this weird scratching sounds, and of course, and I'm just like, that's it. This is it. I'm gonna go save my friend, and I'm gonna be a hero, and it's gonna be a great story, right? I go around the whole mansion. And what do I see? It's a nice lady, just doing laundry, and then she sees me, and then she suddenly starts yelling, and then suddenly all these people just start coming out of the woodwork from the mansion, because apparently like they just like living in a mansion where there's no lights or no electricity, and they chase me out of the mansion. And it just turns out that mansion just belonged to the principal of the school, which we didn't know because I was 8. And yeah, those are all of his like family and his like staff that were like in this mansion. So
Well, I
yeah,
hope the student is okay.
oh
We
yeah,
don't have to worry about
yeah,
that. I hope they're
he's
fine.
yeah, no, it turns out he's okay. He just moved. He sent a letter in like a week later. He's like, oh yeah, I'm in the next city over. And I was like, oh okay, well. They're looking for me now. They don't know what I look like because it was at night. But there was a whole announcement the next day. So yeah.
I love that story. And I love when you always tell that, because that's literally how it works. It's so scary. I actually will tell, this will be very quick, but this is actually something very close to our family. My mom actually, when she first came to the Philippines with our younger brother, our baby brother Daniel, she actually believed that he was like cursed because he was always crying, and he was like never like, there was something wrong. Like, he was always crying and all these things. So my mom actually took him not to a church, not to a hospital. No, honey. My mom took him to a witch doctor and babaylan, shaman. That was the first thing, because the woman in the Philippines were telling my mom, you need to take him to a witch doctor. You need to get some spiritual healing for him, because there could be some like, demon like holding onto his spirit. So my mom actually took our baby brother Daniel. It's such a like beautiful story, but it's also kind of scary story. But
yeah,
I went to this witch doctor in our local community and kind of did this like ritual, and actually found out, come to say, that there was some sort of like spirit holding on to Daniel. It was like a child spirit, I think. I remember I think he was just trying to play with his like baby spirit, and like wouldn't let go of him, and Daniel was just like scared. So the shaman at the time had just did a very quick cleansing ritual to just allow the spirit to kind of go on and pass along, so that it wasn't being tethered to the body of like a human. And actually, after that ritual, Daniel stopped crying. So
it worked.
I really like it. When we say we believe in these spiritual things, it's real, because why did Daniel stop crying after being visited from the witch doctor? I'm telling you, these spirits are real, and it's something that we actually commune a lot with growing up and within our community, right? And so happy that Daniel's fine, but also very scary that a little spirit was like tethering his soul to his body. But I was kind of going there. So I'm going to go to the next question, because I know we are running out of time. There's the next question. Would you ever want to record an audiobook? I love this reading. I'm so glad you love this reading. And yes, I actually did record an audiobook. So an audiobook is on the way. Woo, woo, woo. Unfortunately, Patrick is not in the audiobook. I know.
Not yet.
His Emmy voice is amazing, but just given the production budget that I had, and like my what I had from the capacity with my publisher, I had to read the entire book with my own voice reading from start to finish. So hopefully you like my reading and like it just as well. But yes, an audiobook is on its way. I just recorded the entire book, and it's now been sent to editing with my publisher. So it should hopefully be ready by 2022. So be on the lookout for that audiobook announcement. But the hardcover is out now. So that just got released actually, 2 weeks ago, just recently. But audiobook will be on the way, and hopefully production in the future with my brother reading as well.
Yeah. One day we're going to be hoping for that.
One day future.
Yeah. Another question is, how was the writing process in college? So that's very, do you want to answer that? Do you want to answer that, Jamie?
Yeah. How was the writing process? So I guess, I did start writing this when I was in college, and pretty much the writing process was pretty, it went through kind of its developmental stage, where I started off from, developing it from the creative aspect. So I did kind of the Book Creators Club. So I don't know if folks are familiar with the Book Creators Club. Eric Koister, shout out to Eric Koister. He kind of runs that program, and it's kind of, developing it from your creativity. And then once you kind of go from there, during college, I just had really good time management. Hopefully that's what the question was. But I don't know how I was, honestly. I was just time management with like finals and everything. But I had to make sure that I was dedicating hours to writing this story. And making sure, that I was, dedicating a lot of time. I know we are kind of, we don't have too much time, so I can't go too much into detail about, you know, the logistics into the creative process, but I really did lean into my older brother for that creative piece. If Patrick, if you want to talk about the hero's journey really quickly.
Yeah. I mean, again, Jamie did most like all the hard work when it came to this book. The making, and I think the hardest part of making a book is, again, making the idea of it. And this is, and
Right.
again, I'm always gonna give Jamie this, that the fact that they made this amazing idea and made it come to life. I was only there for the nerdy stuff. I was there to just like make sure they were storyboarding it right, making
Yep.
sure the story, the plot structure was following a proper plot structure, or at least
Exactly.
something that made sense. I always wanted to ask, so what's Mala doing? What's Salem doing? What's it like? Making sure character motivations were always at the forefront. So yeah, I wouldn't say editor. I would say just like junior editor. Like,
beta reader, and
Yeah.
I had a beta reader community, and that was the point, right? Beta readers got to read early drafts of the story, and that made sense. So a lot of the writing process was really a lot of in its early drafts, but I relied a lot on my community to read my work and provide feedback into my work. So it was not a singular process. Like I wasn't hidden away in some cabin just writing my story and then voila, here's my final manuscript of draft. No, like it took several drafts, rewrites. It took listening to feedback, hard criticism from my brother, from my editors, from other beta readers to really bring that story full to life. And then while I was writing in college, it took a lot of time management. And in addition to that, it took a lot of just being dedicated and motivated to the vision and the importance and significance of the story.
Yeah.
And afterwards, and then got to really partner with New Degree Press. Shout out to my publisher, New Degree Press, who helped to then make the story come to life with their editors as well, and their marketing plans to help really bring Mala and the Massive Gold into the market.
Right.
So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think it took us like 2 hours at least to like try to come up with the ending too.
Yeah, Patrick,
like
the ending because I really wanted to end in a beautiful note. I had so many ideas, but I only knew that I could trust Patrick with the ending, and it was awesome to really rely on my sibling to really, again, help come up with some beautiful ending together that was going to help, you know, create a powerful message of hope. And I guess that leads us to our next question. What's the overall message you want to convey to your audience after they finish reading Mala and the Massive Gold? The overall message I want you all as readers to basically know is you can own your own story. Whatever story it is, you own your own story. You own your own journey. Your life is yours to write, right? Every page, every chapter, every book that you want to do, it is yours to own. And I really want folks to know that because for me, throughout this journey of writing Mala and the Massive Gold, I dealt a lot with imposter syndrome. And that was really something that I had to really overcome, right? And the story in its heart is a story of healing. It's a story of overcoming that adversity. And it's a story of radical love, leaning into your family, your community, and leaning into others, right? To help get you to where you need to be. So if, you know, you are a reader, right? Whether you're in the LGBT plus community, whether you are Filipino, Filipina, Filipinx, whether you are Southeast Asian, whether you are just a POC minority, or whether you're just someone who likes adventure books, right? You don't have to fall into a particular genre. Maybe you're just reading the book because you found it and you like it, right? There is a message for you there. But the overall unified message is, you know, you can own your own story and you can be the hero of your own story, right? And hopefully it has actually, this story has inspired so many people to write their own books, right? I've had people reach out to me like, you know, I'm writing my own story. Thank you so much. I've had people reach out to me like, you know, I'm starting a business now. Like, oh my goodness. Like, thank you for, you know, writing this book because this helped inspire me to start a business. I've had people reach out to me like, you know, I'm actually going to start becoming a babaylan. Like, oh my gosh, like they inspire them, but they're like, this story helped, you know, with that, like, yes, be a babaylan, right? This is still real. This is still a real practice, right? And I've had people, you know, inspire love where it's like, you know, I have a child who just came out as LGBT plus. I don't know how to deal with it, but I'm going to buy this book for them and I'm going to read it and I'm going to gift it to them so that they know that I care and love them, right? That is really the overall message there, right? that's how you can own your own story. How can you apply that message of radical love into your own life, into the life that you deserve, and into the love that you want to spread within your own family and within your chosen family and friends? So.
And guys, also, if you want books that are just like Mala and the Mask of Gold, if
Yes.
you're in the DC area, the #1 place to go get them is Busboys and Poets. They are at the forefront when it comes to spreading all this positivity, all these messages. If you don't know anything, if you don't know about, if you want to read a book about a certain subject or anything, Busboys and Poets are most likely gonna have it. So yeah.
Busboys and Poets is my favorite platform. It's a beautiful cultural hub, especially for those who are not within the DMV area. So if you ever come and visit DC, come through, eat at Busboys and Poets, grab a good read, Mala and Master Gold, and just chill and vibe. And, you know, we're all for, you know, social justice, radical love, and community healing. So, but other than that, you know, I think we're coming up on time. Great questions, everyone. Thank you so much for those who were able to sit in and join. Truly appreciate it. Again, huge thank you to Busboys and Poets for having this platform today. Thank you, Kuya, Patrick, for, you know, being here. But yeah.
Thank you for having me. And again, thank you to Busboys and Poets again. Thank you guys for joining us in this discussion and just this presentation. So
yes. Yay.
Hi. We're going to say goodbye to Patrick and Jamie. Thank you all so much again for just having this event tonight. That was great. I loved learning more about just Filipinx mythology. We don't get enough that isn't Eurocentric mythology in our schools. Like I grew up learning all about Greek mythology, but this is awesome. And I'm definitely going to like look into some more media about that. And all right, y'all. Special thank you to all of our guests who visited, who logged in tonight. Please follow Jamie and Patrick online at their Instagrams for more information and updates about their current and future projects. If you're interested in purchasing a signed copy of Mala and the Mask of Gold, please contact books@busboysandpoets.com with the subject line, signed copy of Mala and Mask of Gold request. That way we know exactly what you're looking for and we can help you out, no problem. To request an unsigned copy, feel free to purchase online from our bookshop website at bookshop.org/shop/busboysbooks. Or, like they said, you can come in store to our flagship at 14th and V, and we have some signed copies ready and hot off the sign and press for pickup. Catch us at our next book event where we wrap up Pride Month with our new book club, Cambio, a meeting place for community members and those beyond to visit the intersections of literature and social change through a queer radical lens with us. We plan to have a mix of fiction and nonfiction, with this month's pick being Things We Lost to the Water, a harrowing tale about a young Vietnamese woman arriving to New Orleans with their 2 young children as refugees, going back and forth from mother to child's perspective with time jumps leading us all the way up to New Orleans in 2005. We follow them from their midnight escape and leaving behind her husband and his father, the young son coming of age into his queer identity, all the way to Katrina hitting New Orleans. We have signed copies available for purchase on our Eventbrite page, as well as in-store at our Tacoma location at 235 Carroll Street Northwest. You can also purchase an unsigned copy of the book club pick at bookshop.org/shop/busboysbooks. We'll be meeting on June 30th virtually at 7 p.m. Eastern. Audiobooks are available online through Libro.fm with Busboys and Poets Books as your chosen bookstore. For more accessibility requests and any questions, please reach out to kevin.z@busboysandpoets.com. Again, thank you all so much, and don't hesitate to visit us at busboysandpoets.com for more events across the DC, or at Busboys and Poets across handles, so Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. I'll go ahead and leave a link for you all. But other than that, that's the conclusion of our program. Thank you all so much. Have a good evening and happy Pride.